In a story of war and rebellion, it's easy to celebrate the fiery heroes. The ones leading the charge. You know the type. Radiant paladins, vengeful dragoons, charismatic leaders who can rally a nation with a single speech. But what about the heroes who find their real strength after the battle is lost? What about the warriors whose greatest victory isn't won with a sword, but with an open hand? This is the full story of Gosetsu Daito. The samurai who lost everything fighting for his homeland, only to find a greater purpose in an act of impossible compassion. Hailing from the eastern land of Doma, Gosetsu was a peerless warrior and a loyal retainer who had already lived a full, hard life. He'd seen his home fall to the Garlean Empire, lost his wife and daughter in the chaos, and even spent years as a mercenary just to earn his freedom. But his story is far from over. He is Stormblood's unsung hero, a man who proves that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from defiance, but from forgiveness. Before we go further, ask yourself this. If the person who destroyed your life begged for mercy, could you show it? Because Gosetsu did. Alright, when we first rejoin Gosetsu, it's not on some glorious battlefield, but it's in the neutral port of Kogane. We'd glimpsed him before, the loyal Doman retainer who once crossed the sea seeking help for his fallen homeland. But here, he's a man far removed from that envoy. His armor is worn, his spirit tired, and though his blade still rests at his side, you can tell it's not victory that keeps him going, it's duty. It's a humbling start that immediately tells you this isn't a story about an invincible hero. This is a man who has already been through the ringer and is still willing to keep fighting. Gosetsu is everything you would expect from a classical samurai, unflinchingly loyal, bound by a strict code of honor, yet with a surprisingly warm and jovial heart that doesn't fit the decades of hardship he's endured. His goal is simple: return to Doma, find the scattered resistance, and keep fighting the impossible fight. He serves Hien, the young heir to the Doman throne, and his loyalty isn't just duty, it's a deep fatherly love. You see, Gosetsu was entrusted with Hien's safety after Lord Kaien's fall, and he's carried that promise across decades of exile and loss. That devotion is tested almost immediately upon returning to Yansha. You see, the Doma he finds is suffocating under Viceroy Yotsuyu, whose cruelty knows no bounds. During one infamous scene where she forces starving villagers to fight for food, Gosetsu can't stand by. He steps forward, not with his blade though, but with a plea. He offers himself in exchange for their lives. Right there, his soul is laid bare. Gosetsu's honor isn't about personal glory or a warrior's pride. It's about shielding the innocent, even if it cost him his freedom. He's captured and tortured, but his spirit never breaks. And his sacrifice near the Ruby Sea reignites Doma's hope, fueling Hien's movement and the Scion's resolve to strike back. You can feel how much his heart aches in silence. This isn't a fearless samurai, but a man who remembers every face he couldn't save. After a daring rescue by the Confederacy, Gosetsu is finally free, but the road to liberation is a long one. When Lord Hien journeys to the Azim Steppe to seek allies among the Zala tribes, Gosetsu follows, and it changes him. He comes from a world of rigid samurai codes, honor, loyalty, the blade. The Zala, on the other hand, live by a different creed: strength, freedom, and an ancestral reverence. Instead of judging them, Gosetsu listens. He sees their spirit, the way they fight, the way they honor their dead. And he realizes that courage wears many faces. It's a quiet revelation for a man in his later years. That wisdom doesn't mean clinging to old truths, but learning to see through another's eyes. In these moments, you catch a glimpse of an older warrior rediscovering life itself. Laughing, learning, humbled by the vastness of the steppe and the people who call it home. The liberation of Doma culminates in the assault on Doma Castle, Yotsuyu's iron fortress. The fighting is brutal, personal, centuries of oppression unleashed in one desperate bid for freedom. At the climax, Lord Hien faces Yotsuyu in the throne room, but the Viceroy, consumed by her own hatred, triggers the castle's collapse, intent on burying everyone with her. As the ceiling gives way, Gosetsu roars, hurling himself under the falling stone, holding it back with his raw strength. He shouts for Hien and the Warrior of Light to flee. And as he strains, with everyone just kind of standing around for quite a good while, Yotsuyu shoots him twice, sealing his fate. Man, even bleeding out, he refuses to yield. He looks at her, the architect of Doma's suffering, and doesn't see a monster. He sees a woman consumed by her own pain. With his final breath, he tells Hien to live, to lead, to rebuild. The castle then just collapses. Both Gosetsu and Yotsuyu vanish beneath the rubble. Doma is free, but the victory somehow just feels hollow. One of its bravest sons is gone. But what if death wasn't the end of his story? What if the man who gave his life for Doma was destined to save its soul instead? Well, against all odds, both survive. It seems to be a Final Fantasy XIV thing, doesn't it? Well, they wash up on a remote island, battered but breathing. Gosetsu, despite his wounds, builds a makeshift raft and brings them back to Asari. Yotsuyu's mind is completely shattered. She remembers nothing. Not her crimes, not her title. She calls herself Tsuyu, a name as fragile as the person she's become. This is the defining chapter of Gosetsu's life. He could have left her. He could have sought vengeance. Instead, he stays. He becomes her caretaker, her protector. The man who once feared nothing, now learning the quiet strength of mercy. And he sells his treasured katana, the symbol of his entire identity, just to feed them. And later, another quest even lets you track down that same blade and return it to him, which is pretty cool. It's one of those tiny, heartfelt details that show he never truly lost himself. He just found a different kind of honor. Well, some time passes. When Tsuyu's tragic story reaches its end, Gosetsu does not return to his old life. His body is frail, but his heart is stronger than ever. He turns to study the healing arts, the ways of the Shugenja, and by the time of Endwalker, we see him again, staff in hand, aiding Doma's people as a healer rather than a warrior. Gosetsu Daito's story is a masterclass in quiet heroism. He begins as the archetype that we all recognize, the noble, aging samurai. We expect him to fight bravely and die with honor. But his true heroism begins after his supposed death. He's the man who lays down his sword not because he's beaten, but because he's finally found peace. He teaches us that real strength isn't found in vengeance on war. It's found in compassion, in choosing to build instead of destroy. While others rebuild Doma with steel and stone, Gosetsu rebuilds it through grace and forgiveness. He doesn't just help Doma rise again, though. He becomes the living embodiment of its rebirth. He is the quiet foundation upon which peace is built. A hero not of war, but of the healing that follows it. And that's the full story of Gosetsu Daito, The unsung hero who taught us that redemption isn't just for the fallen, but for those brave enough to forgive. What did you think of Gosetsu's journey? Do you agree he's one of Stormblood's greatest unsung heroes? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. It helps more adventurers discover these stories from the world of Final Fantasy XIV. And of course, thank you so much for supporting Somnial Gaming, where we explore the deeper stories behind the games we love.